to our webinar, Prototype Design and Development Prototyping. And to guide us and share knowledge and experience on the topic, we have with us Professor Kahkashan Siddavatam ma'am. Now, I would like to introduce our guest speaker to the audience. Our guest speaker is Professor Kahkashan Siddavatam ma'am. She is a faculty member in our college who actively participates and conducts many activities in the curriculum for the students.
I would like to call Professor Kahkashan Siddavatam ma'am to take over by introducing herself to today's topic, prototype design and development prototyping.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I will just switch off my webcam. Okay. Good morning to all the students. And first of all, I will thank Richa Singh for introducing me. I will also like to thank to LTC management and Dr. Rajeshree ma'am for giving me this opportunity to deliver the talk on prototype design and development prototyping. So as we all know and we are aware that the government has introduced a new educational policy which is NIP into 2020. And this educational policy gives more emphasis on skill development of students and entrepreneurship rather than just what they are having now with only taking knowledge from books, which is called as bookish knowledge. So if we talk about an entrepreneur, it is like we are looking, every entrepreneur, they look for the secret to success. So to bring the idea, whatever they have, so that they can go for a business. So to start up with the idea, they need to have a prototype. So we can say that a prototype is a link between a business idea and doing business. So for this, let me just start with an example. So if you are a designer and you are working on a project, and suppose you have decided to build a project and you are getting lot of problems, you have just started with a project and you want that to be ready and you are facing lot of problems and you are also trying to solve, you are coming up with some solutions, you are spending time ideating after that, and then you come up with some potential solution. But what happens if your solution is wrong? A well executed bad idea is a big waste of time and energy. So it's critical to reveal a bad idea as early as possible so that we can, in the beginning, we can avoid all the difficulties, all the wastage of time and energy. So we should distinguish a good idea from a bad one. So we have a tool that allow us to do that, and that is a prototype. So prototype is an experimental model of your idea, and it allows you to test before building or before giving a full solution to the project. One more example I have. Suppose we have a builder and he got some space and he want to construct a building. So what he does? He has to first put his idea on a sketch. He has to go to architecture. He has to get a plan for the building. He makes a sketch ready for the building. And then he needs some investors. So to get the investors, to attract the investors, he has to tell, he has to convince it by making a 3D model of the building which he has thought of. So when investors get a look in a 3D model instead of a sketch on a paper, they will be more attracted and they will get an idea of how the building could be. Then we will talk about the buyers. So when the building is ready and when the buyers should be attracted, they should be convinced to get a flat, he makes one room or one flat ready, and we call that as a model flat. And looking at this, the people get convinced about how the amenities are or what all things have been planned. So this is nothing but different types of prototypes which the builder has come up, so that whatever he has decided, whatever idea he had, he tried to get his business done. So I hope you have just got a simple idea about what we'll be talking about. So what is the table of contents? So in the table of contents, I will just be going through these topics. So it is what is prototyping, why entrepreneurs need prototyping, when should I prototype, then types of prototype, then we'll talk about some prototype techniques and tools, and then we'll talk about prototyping model and disadvantages. So to start with, we know that prototyping is an essential part of a product development in companies. And even though it is an important part of product development, yet it is not that much explored. So as an entrepreneur, we should all know, or we should get an idea of what prototyping is. So there are some of the definitions which have been laid down. So we can say that it is a low cost, low risk way of developing, testing and improving ideas at the early stage. It is a basic working model. It is a mock-up or a simple simulation of a product which lead us to create a minimal viable product to final product and variations. So historically, prototyping was an innovation method most commonly used by engineers, designers, web developers, rather than public sector. But nowadays, as there is a growing interest, so this approach is adopted for the public sector as well and service design. So it is a scaled down version of a product. It is visual representation of our idea to test it with users quickly and take feedback. So we can get lots of different ways of explaining this prototyping. So all means the same because it is an essential part of any product development. So if we think about in design thinking, it comes in the fourth step of design thinking. So we all know in design thinking, we have to emphasize, define, ideate, and then a prototype is required. So that is why it is having a strength, or we can say it is a requirement when we go for any design thinking process. Now, why entrepreneurs need prototyping? So I have just listed down some of the important points so that we should come or we can understand why it is a requirement for entrepreneurs. So basically, when we have any idea, only theory part is not a perfect way. Unless we start physically with working for the idea, we will not get to know what are the flaws, what are the problems in the thinking. So it enables us to test and refine the functionality of your design. So if we have a prototype, we can test the functionality of the idea. So you will never know the design issues, challenges until you actually begin taking your idea from theory to reality. So then also it makes possible to test the performance of various materials. Like sometimes when we have an idea and we think that, okay, now for my this product, metal will be just a good option. But when I start trying to test it, I realize that, oh, plastic is much better material and also it is at a lower cost for my application. So the prototype stage will help us determine the best materials also. It also helps us to describe the product more effectively with your team. So if we, in the theory, we teach something, the part that is not being understand, you may get it more clear when you go for practicals. So same way, when you are having a prototype, when you actually show the layout, the sketch of your product, so you may more effectively describe the product. Even you can describe it. Your team means it actually includes attorney, marketing experts, engineers, potential business partners. These are all the members of the team. It also encourages others to take you more seriously. So just telling my idea in front of any student or in front of any investor or in front of anyone, so they may think that, okay, this is somewhat, but might be that is not of that much. So when you arrive with a prototype and you have something in hand that will be more convincing to meet the professional. It can be anything with your team, like if you want to go to investors or if you want to show it to a marketing expert, anyone will be more convinced and will more encourage to you if you have a prototype in your hand. So instead, if you have, if you are you are setting a business and you are just a startup entrepreneur, so if you will be viewed as a professional with a purpose, and there will be no opposition given by any inventors for this potentially good idea. The next thing why we have to go for prototype is to effectively present the idea to customers. So if we are coming up with any product for the customer, so we should be able to present the idea to customer, and it is only possible to present it in a prototype form. So it is possible to present your future product to customer, and you can just tell them how actually the product may be useful to them. And that is also one of the marketing strategies to attract the customers. So that is why we need to have a prototype. So we can use prototype as an ideation method where we are exploring where we are exploring our ideas. We are adopting a think by doing mindset. It is not only just we are thinking, but it is like adopting a thinking by doing mindset, which is extremely useful in letting us having more research, defining, testing done on our ideas. So that there are many reasons why prototyping is required based on what kind of business you are planning or what field you have chosen. It might be anything. So these are some of the points which I have laid down for just to get you know why we need prototyping. Now here you can see that there are some diagrams shown. So this is what we should have a prototype. So it is actually a link between your idea and the actual product. So to identify user interface and functional requirement, you can see we should have a prototype. So can't always get things right in the first time. So if you could have made a prototype, you have drawn a sketch, then such mistakes could be avoided before you give any final product. Now, when should I start? What will be the exact time to start prototyping? So if you see in design thinking, uh, you generally go in a cycle like generating ideas. You are turning ideas into concept. Then you are coming from concept to prototype. So this is how in design thinking the cycle goes. So first we have to generate ideas. So if I have any idea, I have to turn it into concept. I have to talk to my team. I have to find out what concept will be more suitable, what algorithms may come up if I am planning for any application. And then I can just get, if I have a website, so what will be my layout of the website? So from concept to prototype. So this is how the prototype, and this is where the prototype should be placed. So it is that it is an early stage, or it is a post design stage, or it is a pre-development stage. So even in the diagram, I have just tried to get the explanation that idea and then we have the prototype. So before successful implementation, we can see that prototype once is done, it is to be tested, it is to be optimized, and that cycle repeats until we get a complete output which is with a correct or without any error, and then we can say that we can give it to the customers and we can call it as a successful implemented product. So next we have types of prototypes. So there are some types of prototypes. So we can categorize them basically as low fidelity prototypes and high fidelity prototypes. So fidelity means how much in detail you are talking about. Like if I say I am a website designer, so generally a website has to be redefined, or it has to be at different levels. We have to always redefine, we have to go in detail. So in that case, if I want to do it where iteratively redefining is required, I should find out which kind of method will be suitable for that. Is it a low fidelity or it is a high fidelity? So based on resources available to you and for what purpose the prototyping is to be done, we can choose a low fidelity or a high fidelity prototyping. So what is low fidelity prototypes? So low fidelity means by from the name itself, we can see that it is just a simple and incomplete version of a final product. So we can, if I have a website, it is only the front end, we can say only all the visual features and contents are conveyed to the customers or to the visitors. So if I talk about low fidelity prototype, the methods which I will be using will be wireframe, storyboard, diagrams, animations. So it doesn't take much time or it doesn't need much effort to translate your broad concept into low fidelity prototype, because we are just talking about a simple and an incomplete version. So it can be just to gather the details, to gather the feedbacks during the early stage. So this might be in the low fidelity prototypes. So high fidelity. So if we compare to low fidelity, this high fidelity is much more interactive and highly functional. So this represents something which is closer to a real product, with most of the design elements, complete design elements are developed. Like I can say example is a simulation. I can say a mock-ups. So these are some of the examples of high fidelity. So some other examples like visual prototyping, physical prototyping, these are also from the name we can understand that they are low fidelity prototypes. So when I go in techniques of all these, you will have a better understanding why we are calling this wireframe, hand sketch, static wireframes as low fidelity. So we have them also in other coming slides, so we'll get an idea there. Now there are different other types of prototypes which are used in software industry today. So they are like, we have rapid, which is also called as throwaway prototyping. Then we have evolutionary prototyping. Then we have incremental prototyping. Then we also have extreme prototyping. So computer students might be knowing about these types of prototypings because you have a subject and might be these are there in that particular subject. Or else just they are very simple, so we can have just a brief idea of what they are about. So rapid prototyping. So rapid means we can say it is a fast, it is a quicker. So it is a process of quickly creating the future state of a product. So we are quickly creating the future state. So it can be a website, the product can be a website, the product can be an app. So sometimes like in COVID, we have seen that quickly we need PPE kit, quickly we need the gloves, we need masks. So these were some rapid, we have used some rapid kind of product here. So in that case where we want something to be in a quick and it should be a cheaper and validation is only required with some group of user, and in that case we can say that it is a rapid prototyping. So next is evolutionary prototyping. So as the name suggests, this prototype grows or evolves. So sometimes we say that when we have any product we have made a prototype of a product. So what we do is we need some feedbacks, we need some suggestions for improvement. So we present it to the user, and then they provide us some improvements, they give some suggestions. So these are then actioned by the developers, and they try to make it in a more refined way. And again, they provide it to the users for the feedback. The user can again come up with more suggestions. So this process is repeated. So what they are doing is, at each stage, whenever they are making a prototype, at each stage, the prototype evolves until it reaches the final system. So we say that it is an evolutionary prototyping. So the advantage of having this type of prototype is the user engage with the system is more likely to meet with all the user requirements. Then we have incremental prototyping. So incremental prototyping means if I am making a prototype, I can separate small prototypes parallelly, and I can build an individual prototype by dividing it in parallel. So the individual prototypes, they are evaluated, like I can say that in evolutionary, what they are doing, they are taking only one particular part, they are finding out the suggestions, they are trying to improve, and then they are going to the second part. But here parallelly, we are taking all the individual parts, and we are trying to evaluate and refine them separately, and then we can merge them into a comprehensive whole product. So which can be evaluated for consistency, we can evaluate how it looks, how it works, what is the behavior. So incremental prototyping is useful for enterprise software, which has many modules, which have many components, and which may be loosely related to one another. And the last one is extreme prototyping. So this approach is more widespread in projects which involves creation of web app development. So app typically they include presentation, they include service layers. So in this case, the extreme prototyping method is structured according to this app architecture. So the designer works on HTML wireframe first, and then they transform it into functional pages, and afterwards they add the service layers. So this is how the extreme prototype is working. You can see there is an example given of a Bluetooth dongle. So how the prototype is designed, then how from a prototype to the final product, how the variations are taking place. Next, we have some techniques, and we can say some tools to prepare the prototype. Might be you have come across with some of the tools if you have prepared any prototype. So the basic is manual sketch. So if sometimes suppose we are trying to be an entrepreneur, or we want to start a startup, so we are constantly thinking about what kind of startup. We may have lots of idea floating in our mind. We may be in any place, sometimes we may be at a lunch meeting, or we may be in any area. So quickly what we can do is, in that case, we can get a basic sketch or a diagram of the idea that is just coming in our mind. So noting down of the idea, this is first, this is the basic way of preparing the prototype. So it is called as a manual sketch. Next is video prototype. So this prototype help present your ideas in the form of animated videos, or we can say simulations, and they best explain the concept. So even the consumers, they want a visualization of the product to understand better. So that can be done by a video prototype. Then we have a horizontal prototype. So horizontal prototype, we can say that it is oftenly used during early stages of analysis. This helps to show the design from the user perspective. Like I have a diagram here to represent what is an horizontal prototyping. Suppose I have decided to come up with a website for a railway system. So you can see that on a paper, I have just laid down the idea of different web pages, what it should be on my welcome page, what it should be on my dashboard page, what should be on my banking system for reservation. So you can see that how the login, how the structure of the page should be. So I have designed that. So horizontal prototype says that we are just giving the layout of the different pages, so that if a user is trying to find out what all menus, what all windows, um what all parts are present in each page, so that is only done in horizontal prototype. I am only designing the login page. I am not going in detail with connectivity to database. In banking for reservation of my seat, I have not designed how, if I give the seat, if I want to say find out whether there are seats available for reservation, then what will be the next step, how the payment should be done. I am not deciding. I am just laying down the structure, or I can say that in a form of screenshots, which only demonstrate the outer layer of the interface of my website in the form of windows, menus, and screens. So that is what horizontal prototype says. Then I have a rapid prototype. So rapid prototype, just now we have seen the rapid prototype where quickly we want our model to come up with. So if in that case, in short span, we want something, or we want our product to be made. So 3D printing, which is very much in demand nowadays. So three-dimensional printing, it allows the engineers to create a more realistic model of any design with the help of a computer and a printing machine. So if you wish to move the design from a production phase to a development phase more quickly, we can use this 3D printing prototyping method to which can also identify the flaws or the requirements, and adjustment can be done there itself. Then we have simulations. So simulations is digitally creating any physical product to predict the performance of the product in real world. So that is about simulations. Then storyboard. So storyboard describes a product in the form of a story. Like if suppose I want to have online uh, a grocery website, so I want to describe it how the interaction between the client with the server is taking place in a form of a story. So there is a storyboard which describes a complete product in the form of story, and it demonstrates a typical order in which the information needs to be presented. So who will give the content, how the customers will select it, then what will be the next step. So that complete procedure or that complete layout can be shown in a storyboard. So like here you can see that there is a storyboard picture which I have taken from a website. You can see that how a storyboard is made for the customers. So this is how you can have an interactive storyboard explaining of actually how your prototype or how your website you are planning to have. Then we have next vertical prototype. So as I said, in horizontal prototype, it is just the uh, only about the human interfaces. So in vertical prototype, it is about going in detail, creating some, or it is something related to database. If I talk about website, so it is basically used in the later stages of analysis. Like when I completely make a front end of my website, at later stages I have to improve my database design. So vertical prototypes are used in the later stages of analysis. So when I want to improve database design, I have to draw a structure of my database showing how many columns, how many tables I will be using. And this is generally considered as a backend model, and it allows us to test essential features, functions for a software application before we move it on to a design phase. Then we have wireframes. So wireframe is a layout, or we can say it is a blueprint, or it is a digital diagram of a final product. So it is commonly used to prototype website, digital tools or softwares. So this is one example of wireframe. So whenever you are a copywriter or you are developer, this method is easy to use and it helps navigate the structure of your content and any other placement. Then we have animation. So we all know, yes, JavaScript functions are used for that, right? You can use animations to visualize your product works. Like if you have a mobile app, and if I want to show how my mobile app is working, I can have an animation for that. You can animate how a user will navigate from one screen to other. So this will be more helpful to the customers to understand how that app is working. So this will also help the stakeholders uh, so that they can invest and the user can get a good idea about the functionality of the product. Then we have feasibility. So this prototype is used to test a certain feature added in the later stages. In the later stages, whenever we add something in the design, so this prototype is used. So feasibility can be checked for both digital and physical models after creating an initial prototype. So now we have these different types of techniques. Now we should decide which prototype technique we are going to use. So how we are going to decide which prototype technique best suits for our product. So this depends on your business and what kind of business you are doing. Know more about your product. What is your product? Note down all the product key components and all the ideas related to that product. Then decide the usability of the product, how it can be used, how whether it is practically possible, and whether you can target the audience. So now you can think about what prototype will best suit for your product, and accordingly you can choose that. So you can decide according to the different we can say features or different kind of product what you are building. Now this is just talking about if we are going to have a prototype. So what will be the steps, or how I could proceed to make a prototype. So in the diagram, you can see that the first is requirement gathering and analysis. So any prototyping model, it starts with requirement analysis. So in this phase, the requirements of the system are defined in detail. So during the process, the users of the system, they are interviewed to know what is their expectation. So you can gather information in different ways. You can either interview, you can either collect the data from the previous model of the same kind which have been made. So you need to gather and analyze the details before you start a prototype. Then quick design. So this is a preliminary design, or we can say a quick design. So in this, you are simply designing the system, but this is not a complete design. You need to only get a brief idea of the system, and you can show that idea to the investors, or you can just show that idea to your teams so that we can develop with the prototype. Then build a prototype. So now in this phase, you are actually a prototype is designed on whatever information is being gathered, and it is a small working model of the required system. Then initial user evaluation. Okay, now the prototype is ready. Before I launch it actually for the users to use, first I should get the feedback, I should get evaluated my product. So this proposed system, I should present it to the client and it should get evaluated. I should come out with what are my strengths and weaknesses. So suggestions, comments, they are collected, and based on this, the evaluation is done. Then refining prototype. So if the user, if the during the evaluation process, if the client is finding that it is not the required one, what we have come up with the prototype, we can refine it. We can get the prototype according to the user feedback and suggestions. So this refining phase will not be completed until all the requirements which are specified by the users are met. Once the user is satisfied, then the developed prototype, a final system is developed based on the final approval done or given to that prototype. Then implement, product and maintain. Once the final system is developed based on the final prototype, once we get our prototype refined and approval, we have come up with the actual product. Now it should be it should be deployed to production. So this system should undergo a routine maintenance. Even though we have launched or we have deployed a product, it should have continuous maintenance so that we prevent the large scale failures and any other errors which may come up later. So that is required even if the implementation of the product is being done. So that is the last step of the prototype model. Now, even though it is very important part of design thinking for entrepreneurs, but there are some of the drawbacks or disadvantages of this prototype model. So we can say that if I want to come up with any product, I have to follow all these steps. I have to first make a prototype. So we can say that it is a slow and time taking process. The cost of developing a prototype is a total waste. Like if I have come up with a prototype using some materials just to convince the investors, just to convince the customers, you can say that it is a total waste, as prototype is ultimately thrown away. So prototype may encourage excessive change request. So always suggestions are coming, and we have to, every time, no one is happy looking at once. So every time we need to have some changes which are given by the users or by the customers. Sometimes customers may not be willing to participate in the interaction cycle for the longer time. There may be far too many variations in software requirements when each time the prototype is evaluated by the customer. So too many variations may be coming up in software if it is being evaluated by the customer. Then poor documentation, because the requirements of the customers are always changing. And it is very difficult for software developers to accommodate all the changes demanded by the clients. After seeing an early prototype model, the customer may think that the actual product will be delivered to him soon, but it takes some time. The client may lose interest in the final product when he or she is not happy with the initial prototype. Developers who want to build prototype quickly may end up building substandard development solutions. So these are some of the disadvantages. Even we can come up with these disadvantages if our prototype we have made, which is a convinced prototype and not too much time is being taken. So we can also avoid these disadvantages. So that's all from my side. So I thank to all the students for patiently listening to me, and all the faculty members who have been joined. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your knowledge with us. If you have any questions for us, please unmute yourself one by one, or else you can type your questions in the chat box.
Anyhow, I'm there in the college, so the students might be knowing me, so they can come to my lab if they have any doubts later on.
If there are any questions, please unmute yourself.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes,
We're forming or making a prototype, and that prototype is success. Then that prototype is converted into a product. No.
yes. If prototype, to make the prototype success, we have to follow those different rules. Like we have to get it convinced by the customers or by the people for whom we are making. So we have to test that prototype. Like suppose in mechanical department, the student generally they have small cars, they try to build a small cars, they test it on the grounds. So if they find that it is a suitable, then they can get investors, they can get their the type of prototype, the type of model, they can launch it in the market. So for that you have to first test, you have to find out whether it is capable in all respect.
Yeah, ma'am.
If you are making a smart home system, so before you apply actually to a home, you make a model of a smart home, you connect sensors to make it a smart, so you check it how it is working, and then you can actually apply to the customers houses.
Yeah, ma'am.
So
Any other questions? Anybody?
Ma'am, the particular prototype. Sometimes the company make the prototype just around 200, 300, and they're not making the product. This it's company choice. They will make the prototype. They will sell.
yeah, yeah. Now you may have heard that there was a PPE kit engineering student had made, and he had decided to have a uh, air conditioning in PPE kit, because the doctors they generally wear it for hours. So he had made that, but that it was not launched in the market. So they may have, the investors may have found it some disadvantage, some errors might be there, and that product might not be that much useful. So it was stopped there itself. Even though the prototype was ready, it could not be launched in the market. So there are
Yeah, ma'am.
different
Thank you, ma'am.
reasons.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay then.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I think so. You all may be looking, or you all may be seeing the Shark Tank India. So how the prototypes, people come up with different prototypes and they try to attract those investors, the Shark Tanks.
Yeah, ma'am. The Shark Tanks and the car companies, which they are designing new models.
Yes, right. So that is the reason why we need to have a prototype. Okay, then Richa, shall we conclude?
Yes, ma'am. Devanshi?
Okay. Thank you for such a wonderful session. As all good things come to an end, so does this session. I, Devanshi Shrivastava, student of Lokmanya Tilak College of Engineering, on behalf of the Institution Innovation Council, would like to thank our guest speaker, Professor Kahkashan ma'am, for enlightening us with knowledge and interesting things. I am pretty sure the precious knowledge shared will definitely help us in our further career opportunities. I would also like to thank the torchbearer of our institute, our respected IIC President and Principal, Dr. Vivek Sunnapwar sir, and Vice President of IIC and Vice Principal, Dr. Subhash Shinde sir, for leading, inspiring, and supporting us to make this webinar successful. Also, thanking our IIC convener, Dr. Rajeshree Shinde ma'am, and faculty in charge, Ms. Smita Ambarkar ma'am, for the support to conduct this event and for helping us in working towards the goal of conducting this webinar. We are thankful for your huge support at all times. Thanking today's coordinators and other members for their contribution. Conducting this webinar would have been impossible without the jealous effort of IIC committee members who have devoted lots of time and energy to this program. I must not forget to thank all the participants present here for their active participation. I sincerely apologize if I have missed anyone. Once again, thank you to one and all present here. We are sharing a feedback form, so please be sure to fill it.
Yes, thank you so much. Shall I drop myself?
Okay, so before that, I would like everyone to switch on their cameras for a quick photo. Okay,
Thanks a lot, everyone, for participating and patiently listening to the webinar. Thanks to our guest too for sharing her knowledge and letting us know about prototype design and development prototyping. We will come up with more interesting and insightful sessions for you all. Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Thank you.